Hello, it's Pastor Jeff. It is Saturday. Hope everyone is doing well in this time of quarantine. Just one note about Sunday worship tomorrow. It's our intention to record it in the morning and then to put it up on our YouTube channel, which can be found at Concordia Lutheran Duluth. And so you can sometime tomorrow log into that channel or go to the YouTube site and you will see hopefully our worship service there. It might also be that we will try to stream it via Facebook Live as well. And so as we have been doing, just reading extensive selection from James Allison's book, Knowing Jesus, and ending with a song. He had just got done writing about that part of the power of the resurrection was that it began to transform the lives of the disciples, and the disciples began to be able to rewrite their lives from an entirely unexpected new vantage point. Now, what was it that made the resurrection have such density? I don't mean what did it look like or even what did it feel like. What I mean is this. How did the resurrection erupt into that network of tangled, sorry relationships that were jarringly painful by Easter Saturday? Of what, insofar as we can describe a unique and normative experience, was the resurrection experience made up? There are hints in the New Testament, but these are difficult to identify because of the familiarity of the texts and because we know what is coming next. I would suggest that the first category by which we can look at this is that of gratuity. It is almost impossible to imagine the shock of the sheer gratuity of the resurrection. Gratuity is when someone gives something to us without any interest attached at all. When we are moved by something that is quite outside the network of relationships, friendships, economic and political ties that constitute our life. Gratuity is when something appears in our life that has no reference at all to what we feel we need or deserve, and over which we have no control, no ability to manipulate. Occasionally we do experience hints of something like this, but mostly all of us are tied into the rhythms of the expected, the reciprocated, the demanded, the earned, or the punished. Now the resurrection was entirely gratuitous. It was gratuitous for Jesus, an act of love by the Father, not a payment for deserving service. Where it is suggested in Hebrews 5 that Jesus deserved the resurrection for us, this has nothing to do with Jesus having acquired a right over and against the Father, a debt which the Father had to honor. What is being talked about there is an exchange of love. The love lived out in obedience in Jesus' life, a love made possible by Jesus being loved in the first place. And no exchange of love are words like deserving or earning, other than weak metaphors, at least from the vanpoint of the participants. Their mutual self-giving is gratuitous and urges no rights. If then the resurrection was gratuitous for Jesus, it must have seemed even more so for the disciples. It was quite outside their experience, and indeed, in the form it took, quite outside the possibility of human vocabulary. Nothing in popular Jewish belief in a resurrection on the last day had led them to prepare for this. It had nothing at all to do with any system or structure or order or network or relationship to which any of them belonged. It was for them something utterly other. To say that it was surprising, unprecedented, and so on is not enough. The gratuity of the resurrection and its utter otherness were part of the same package. The life of Jesus that so disconcerted the disciples. If there's anything clear from the accounts of their appearances, it's exactly this element of consternation, fear, the inability to recognize at first. The way Jesus had to preface his remarks with, "Peace, don't be afraid," points to this. Let's look at this. For the eruption of what is utterly other, utterly gratuitous, is not simply a delightful thing, it is a terrifying one. Whilst we may feel hemmed in by and in conflict with what I call the customary other, the set of relationships in which we have been formed and within which we normally move, both personal, historical, economic, political, at the same time these relationships do at least give us a certain security. What is other to us, in a more distant sense, if you like, The removed other, like visiting a foreign country whose language we don't know and whose culture we don't understand, is both exciting and frightening. It is exhilarating as we see new things and learn about new possibilities and are able to relativize our own way of doing things. But it is also frightening in that we are vulnerable to being moved by the other in ways in which we aren't at home. Things like police and soldiers seem less dependable, not because they are, but because we don't know what to expect and wouldn't know how to cope if we were to get into trouble. We sense that we might be much more easily victimized if things went wrong. We'd have less chance in a foreign court of law. Well, if that's true of the removed other, where we do have a certain sense of shared basic human sensitivity with the locals, then how much truer is it of the utterly other? The purely gratuitous that in its first manifestation is both exhilarating and terrifying. However, the risen Lord was not only utterly other, for it was possible for the disciples to recognize him. After a bit, they were able to say it is the Lord. However, this was not a case of encountering something familiar in the midst of what was other. It was not as if, lost in the middle of Tibet, you suddenly came across someone who offered you tea and biscuits like in England. That would be to suggest that Jesus now passed over and was a bit of who he had been, now stuck in the other world. We would be in the realm of ghosts and spirit divination. Now, what the disciples were able to experience was that of the holy, gratuitous other who was made present to them as a giving back of someone familiar. Not someone from this side gone there, but someone from there given in a wholly new way. That was yet a continuation of the way they had sensed him as being given while he was with them before his death. This meant that the holy, gratuitously, utterly other was no longer simply strange, but without ceasing to be other was a presence of recognizable, familiar love for them. This was the beginning of the recasting of the disciples' perception of God, the holy other, in terms of Jesus, the risen Lord. Everything else said about the resurrection must be a way of qualifying this eruption of the utterly gratuitous other. In the first place, this utterly gratuitous other is the giving back of a freely loving person. It is not a ghost. A ghost haunts. It plays on memories. It is a sign of condemnation. It must be got rid of if we are to live in peace. Do you remember Herod's feeling of guilt when he thought that Jesus was John the Baptist risen from the dead? For him, the presence was not gratuitous. It was an accusation from within the world of his own actions, a vengeance from beyond the tomb. No, the risen Jesus was not haunting, which would not be gratuitous. He was communicating purely gratuitously as a person. Furthermore, the eruption of the gratuitous other happened within the disciples' frame of reference. They were frightened, ashamed, muddled, disappointed. The eruption didn't depend on them being in the right mood. And it happened as forgiveness. This is the second great category of the experience of the resurrection. Part of the utterly gratuitous other is that it is entirely outside any system of retribution and desert, and is therefore experienced by us as loosing us from being tied into the customary other. The gratuitous other quite undermines all things that do not depend on gratuity, both our wounded relationships and our virtues, which involve elements of protection and security. It is both as forgiveness of our sins and complete restructuring of our virtues that the gratuitous other reaches us. The resurrection is forgiveness, not a decree of forgiveness, but the presence of gratuity as a person. by day, your mercies, Lord, attend me, bringing comfort to my anxious soul. Day by day, the blessings, Lord, you send me, draw me nearer to my heavenly goal. Love divine, beyond all mortal measure, brings to naught the burdens of my quest. Savior, lead me to the home I treasure, where at last I'll find eternal rest. Day by day, I know you will provide me strength to serve and wisdom to obey. I will seek your loving will to guide me o'er the paths I struggle day by day. I will fear no evil of the morrow. I will trust in your enduring grace. Savior, help me bear life's pain and sorrow, till in glory I behold your face. Oh, what joy to know that you are near me, when my burdens grow too great to bear. Oh, what joy to know that you will hear me, when I come, oh Lord, to you in prayer. Day by day, no matter what betide me, you will hold me ever in your hand. Savior, with your presence here to guide me, I will reach at last the promised land.